All right. We're here with John Noble. Pleasure to meet you. You're acting for over 30 years now, as far as I know. First entry on Wikipedia is from '88, yes, which is the year I was born in. So we have about 10 or 15 minutes, so we can't cover everything. Nevertheless, I want to start with one of the smaller roles, Lord of the Rings. What was that like?
Lord of the Rings, well, Lord of the Rings was one of the greatest projects that's ever been undertaken. And to actually be involved, even to be near it, was exciting. Denethor was such a hard character. One of the hardest I've played emotionally, because you can imagine, by the time we meet him in the films, he's already deranged.
Yeah.
And he's, we see him arguing with Denethor. We see him sending his sons off. We see him being rude to people.
Yeah.
You think he's a monster. But
it's a very ungrateful role somehow.
It is, and it is. But I had to go back to find out why.
Yeah.
And there were plenty of reasons why he became this isolated, deranged person.
He has lost a lot.
Yeah, and I did, and I went back, and where I couldn't find sufficient, I invented something.
Yeah.
For example, those that know the films would know that he preferred Boromir to Faramir.
Yeah, sure.
And I was thinking, why does this happen? And I knew that Denethor had been married to a woman called Findulis.
Mm.
And so I thought, I know what's happened here. Findulis, who was the love of his life, died in childbirth. Because then there's a tremendous resentment against the child that killed the love of his life.
He blames Faramir for it.
Yeah. So that was part of it, apart from the fact that, he was a steward, he wasn't a king, and there's Aragorn coming back to claim the kingdom. All sorts of things like that come into play. So by the time I actually got there, I had this texture sitting underneath him. But there's an interesting story. There was I thought, there's nothing to redeem me, except the last line I had, and I was sitting on this big sepulchre, laying on the sepulchre with flames going everywhere, and I looked through the flames down at Faramir. I said, "Faramir, my son," like this.
Exactly.
That was my only redeeming. Faramir, my son, which is a bit fun. Whether anyone saw it or not, but that was the only redeeming.
Well, it really humanizes him in the last second, kind of.
In the last second.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was a very complex character.
Definitely.
And very demanding. And but I'm glad I did it. It's that sorts of characters I enjoy. I can't remember having found a role that difficult to do, because I'm a dad. I can't imagine doing that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it. And I had to work so hard.
Sure. But you tend to complex roles over your career. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I personally never got that much into Fringe, but I have several friends who love the show, and I had them tell me questions to ask you.
Okay.
So first question is, your character Walter, he apparently medicates himself with a cocktail of drugs.
Mm-hmm.
What's that cocktail?
Okay, there's a background to this. In the 80s, just a quick one, there's a thing called the Harvard experiments, where a group, Timothy Leary and a group of people were experimenting with LSD and so forth, and he was of that period.
Oh, right.
He was of that period, so he would have gone through that period of time where they were just trying things, and also the music that he was involved with, the Grateful Dead and things like that, who were very much part of that era. So I went back and researched all of that. I knew a lot of it, but I went back and researched again to see from what culture he came.
Yeah.
And but he was also then considered to be dangerous, and he was put into a mental asylum. Mm-hmm. And in mental asylums, you get fed so much stuff. One of my research points was what effect does, let's say we get, it's called a drug X. What effect does that have as you come off the drug? Because we know if you come off any drug, there's a withdrawal. And so then I went to the books and I found out what he might have been given.
Yeah.
And these powerful drugs. And then I looked at what the withdrawals would be. If you look at Walter in the opening scenes, he's got something going like this.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
This mannerism. And that was direct response to what can happen. Same as facial
withdrawal,
withdrawals of certain drugs. And as he became better, and those that watch carefully over the next 5 years, just occasionally when he got very stressed, you do that. It would come back, as things do. So I did a lot of research.
It's really insightful.
Yeah,
that's cool. Next question was, if you could pick one invention from Fringe that would become real, which one would it be?
I don't think there's too much doubt. They'll all become real. I mean, the serious ones. At the time we did Fringe, we were studying, I studied quantum mechanics, what was happening in the world and what was being discovered in particle physics and so forth. And one of the things that we went into was the parallel universes, which at that stage were theoretically possible. Now it's commonly accepted.
Pretty much, yeah.
Scientifically, absolutely. Not the way we played it, but we know that there's at least 11 identified. So we did a lot of things that were just ahead of the time, which is why we were so successful with the scientific community.
Yeah.
And so many scientists have said to me, that's so interesting the way you went about that.
That leads us to the third question, actually. That would be, what's your personal take on paranormal phenomena? Do you think there is more to our world than meets the eye? And if so, is it just science that we don't have yet?
The answer to that is yes. But the belief systems that we build around things, we can only come from the experience we have. So when we believe in the supernatural, the paranormal, that's all we can do. That's as far as our intellect will take us, unless we're very well read and possibly quite spiritual and or intelligent, then we can see beyond. So there's paranormal, I don't think it's paranormal. Science fiction, I think, is a misnomer, because good science fiction has always predicted the future. Always. Going back to Jules Verne, always predicted the future.
For sure.
You know? So science fiction becomes science fact.
Yeah.
And with the speed of things, exponential changes, it's happening so fast.
Okay.
You know, who could believe it?
Yeah.
So it's science fiction, science fact. Unless it's rubbish.
Of course, happens too.
But you know, is time travel rubbish? Well, possibly not. Through wormholes, you know.
Exactly. Okay, so another part of your work, I recently found out that you did the voice of Scarecrow for Batman Arkham Knight. So I, in my job as Batman, got to take you down and bring you into Arkham. So what's the difference for an actor if you do voice work compared to when you're on stage or in a movie?
They're all technically different, quite distinctly, but the same basis for the actor, the same basis of truth has to be there. Otherwise it doesn't work. So whether I'm doing a voice there, or if I'm acting on stage, or film or television, they're all different. I mean, stage and television are so different technically, but the same truth has to apply, and you just have to adjust technically to that. And so it is with the voice.
Did you do motion capture for Scarecrow too, or was it just the voice?
No, I didn't. I had done motion capture, and the first time it was used in a game called L.A. Noire.
Yeah.
It was the first time. And I was very fortunate to be in at the ground floor, because a friend of mine created that game. I didn't think I was going to be in it. He just used to get me to come in. And anyway, then he finally said to me, will you do the role? Yes. He was a Leyland someone or other, and he was vile, swearing and all that. And I won't say what he used to say, but that was a breakthrough in motion capture. It was really exciting to be part of those things where it's new.
Yeah. That actually leads me to the next question. You have experience in motion capture then, and one thing that I was always wondering, for an actor, the act of acting has changed so much in the last 50, 60 years because of technologies that we developed. So what do you think would, for example, Humphrey Bogart say if you show him a picture like, let me just look the picture up because I prepared one. That is Josh Brolin from Infinity War, who of course plays Thanos. So what do you think an actor, a traditional one, would say if you show him this picture and tell him that's acting in 60 years?
Oh, he would probably just say, that's Errol Flynn. Do you know who Errol Flynn is? There were those that were the action heroes then as well. But I don't know, Bogey was Bogey. He was what I would call a personality actor rather than a character actor.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what he would have done with it, but he was a clever fella. And if he could find the truth in it, he would have done it. But if he couldn't, he wouldn't have.
Sure.
But No, I don't think that stops us. For example, we play historical plays where we dress up as people that lived in England 400 years ago in Shakespeare, and no one thinks too much about that.
For sure.
So, yeah. And, you know, Star Wars, some great actors have done Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's not a problem.
But it's probably different to act if there's a lot of green screen and very little
Oh, the technical
scenery.
side of it.
Yeah.
Oh, technically, yes, absolutely. There are theories also that we are becoming redundant. We actors are redundant because we'll all be done. I don't believe this to be true, because there's something about the personal stuff you get
Exactly.
when you look into a person's eyes and the subtleties that you can't. God, you'd have to be a genius to get the subtleties that we try to get into our performances. So I don't think actors are redundant or will become redundant for a very long time. No, those they were, you know, they were Hollywood. They belonged to the studio system, but they were bloody good actors. You know, many of them. Yeah.
There's a reason why people use motion capture and don't just animate the whole thing completely.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a human depth to it then.
Well, you look at, speaking of where motion capture could take you, and talk about Lord of the Rings for a minute. Andy Serkis, who's one of the finest men I know, but he was just brought in to do Gollum, and he started to do it, and then Peter Jackson was watching him, and he could physicalise it so brilliantly, and then he wanted to do the voice, colour, and he said, I can do this. And so Gollum was created out of a really fine technical actor taking that challenge.
Yeah.
You know, that's
amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so wrap-up question. We're at ComicCon, of course, so superheroes are a big theme. If you could pick one superhero to play in a lead role in a movie, which one would it be?
Well, a bit old for them. A bit old for those. I'd have to get an older superhero. Well, I've often thought that would be fun.
Hugh Jackman is not Wolverine anymore, so they need a new Australian for that.
Older Wolverine, the old nails all crawling. I don't know. Superheroes. I don't know. The trouble with superheroes is that they're two-dimensional sometimes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sit well with me. If you've got a complex who shows vulnerability but still finds strength. You see what? I watch the great actors work. They always, the best ones, always had the moment of vulnerability. Always.
Yeah, that's true.
They didn't know they have the answers the whole time. They would go this moment of doubt, and then they would be strong. And that's the human thing that we actually identify with.
All right.
And that would be the case with if I was to do a superhero, that would have to have that, where you fight against your own humanity, oh God, we're going to do this. That would be interesting.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
it was a pleasure meeting you.
You too, my friend.
Have a good ComicCon.